Hey, hello, thanks for joining. Great to see you all here. We've got a few minutes away from getting started. For those of you joining, if you don't mind just making sure that you're muted, I'll try and keep an eye on things just in case anyone isn't. But if you drop in the chat, like where are you from? Like it'd be great to obviously see what countries we've got people coming in from. Be as specific as you feel comfortable saying. We'll be getting started in a couple of minutes, so. Hey, great to see Colombia here. So for those of you that don't know, I'm in the UK. I'm down on the south coast. Cameras being on are optional. I'm not going to lie, it's nice to see some faces, but at the end of the day, I appreciate people are sometimes either watching this in the background if they're not fully focused, like it's on whilst they're doing other things. Some people just don't like being on camera, so there's no pressure there, but it is nice to obviously see faces. Hey, Mohammed, good to see you. So as people join, like I say, drop something in the chat, where you're from, how long you've been following, what you're hoping to take away from the session. I'm going to give it until a couple of minutes past the top of the hour, so that I can then focus on the presentation instead of just letting in a few of the stragglers. So we'll get started in literally 2 or 3 minutes, more than likely. But yeah, like share in the chat something about yourself, where you're from, what you're hoping to accomplish. At the end of the session, depending on how we're doing for time, I'll open up a Q&A. This is your opportunity to ask any questions about the presentation, about anything related, anything that's that you'd like some help and support with that's obviously on topic. So if you do have any questions, feel free as we go through the chat, as we go through the presentation, put them in the chat ahead of time. That will be the first place that I'll look for questions. And then if we have time, I'll ask people to unmute themselves and we can talk in front of the group and kind of work through anything you're looking for help with. So I need to get myself a fairly quick escape today. It's my daughter's prom, so I need to get there to get some photos as a doting dad. These moments don't come around too many times. So I'm excited to get through this. I'd love to make sure we've got some time for questions. So I'll do my best to keep us running on time. I'll give it literally another 90 seconds or so, and then we'll get started. I think this is a good session today. I like this topic. I think it's something that's beneficial, regardless as to what level you're at. Like core fundamentals are always incredibly important in the business, but I think especially if you're at a foundational point that I think most people in this room are right now, it's about laying that foundation so that we don't end up compounding bad habits, essentially. So this is something that I always come back to, and it's something that we've worked hard to get tighter and tighter at. So hopefully you enjoy it. Obviously, after the session, I always appreciate any feedback. Like those of you that take the time to just drop me a message, let me know your thoughts, those kind of things. It's always much appreciated. So thank you for that. All right. So let us begin. Just make sure we're good. Fathom is recording. Yep, I believe so. Oh, we've just got a few more people joining. So let's just let these guys in. Yep, Fathom's recording. All right. So I think we are good to get started. So today's training, as it says on the front here, 3 reasons your coaching revenue has hit a ceiling, whatever that ceiling may be. And who am I? And like, who am I to be giving any kind of advice and guidance around this? I spent the last, over 20 years in sales, a large chunk of that in the recruitment space, building recruitment agencies in various different niches. That's for those of you that don't know much about that recruitment space. It's direct cold sales. And then on the back end, it's very much about client retention. So a lot of business to business, cold sales, similar to door, but generally with bigger businesses. Moved to the online space around 8 years ago. And from there have kept moving forward. Worked with over 2,000 businesses in the last 8 years, and very happy to say I was a #1 bestseller with the book DM to Deals, which was written from the digital course that I think several of you may have purchased who are in the room today. So that's available on Amazon everywhere around the world. So, like, old principles, new platforms. This to me is one of the things that I really think makes me qualified, is that these are principles that are old as time. As long as business has been running, these principles have been in play in one way or another. I think the key thing is understanding that things evolve and things move forward. So we just need to understand that, from my perspective, I've built this system from scratch. It's not from theory. It's genuinely from doing it, breaking it, making mistakes, correcting it, moving those things forward. And if any of these sound familiar, you're in the right place. So if you have a lot of volatility in your business, you have a great month, whatever that is to you, and then you have a 0 month or a very low month, another good month, and then another 0 month. And you have no real idea of what that consistency really looks like. You're booking calls, but just not enough. And when you do book calls, a large share of them just aren't showing up. You get on calls with people who seem perfect, and then they say things like, let me think about it, I need to chat with my spouse, and then they ghost you. They don't come back to you. They don't circle back. You feel like you're working harder than ever before, but the numbers at the end of the month just aren't really justifying it. They either look the same or they're going backwards, and you just feel a little bit like you cannot identify what lever to pull to actually produce an upward momentum. Like, you absolutely know what you should be doing. And I think that everyone in this room is going to see what we go through here today. And you're going to say, I've heard these things before, or I've seen these things before to some degree. But there's two issues here. You're either not doing it consistently enough for it to compound, or you're not quite looking in those smaller details because you understand the broader principle, but you don't understand the smaller detail. So just like, for example, if you were swimming and somebody said you can breathe whilst you're swimming, and you just took a big old breath of water up your nose, you're going to choke. And you're like, well, but the guy said I could breathe. But did you have the right equipment? Did you have the right apparatus? Were you doing the right motion? Were you turning your head in the right way if you don't have an oxygen mask, etc., to be able to breathe? And it's really important to understand that the devil's in the detail. Like, we have to get deep on these things. So what is inconsistency actually costing you? So I want to talk through two scenarios here, because I think that this really starts to emphasize the importance of fixing bad habits. Just simply saying, I'll make more money, I'll work harder, I'll blunt force my way to success. And trust me, like, that was my mantra for a very long time. I'll just outwork everybody. Like, doesn't matter about the drag it creates. I'll just keep pushing forward and everything will be fine. But that's not necessarily the case. So let's say, for example, your business is currently doing in the region of 4K per month on an average month. You've got ups and downs, but if you average it out, it's about 4K. But you're shooting for that 10K a month mark. The number that you've probably seen, like, banded around the online coaching space, to the point that the number, you just roll your eyes when you see 10K a month. It's a big round number. It's a nice number. It makes 120,000 a year. It's easy for maths, which is one of the reasons people gravitate towards it. But if you're at 4,000 and your goal is 10,000, even if you had some months where you do a little bit more and you go, oh, well, that's good, I've done a bit more. The thing we're looking at here is the opportunity, like the missed opportunity. So that's a monthly gap of 6,000. Over the course of a year, you not fixing the problem that gets you to 10K, well, that's a $72,000 a year problem. Even if you take off some money for running costs here, let's take off an extra 20%, but we shouldn't need to do that. But let's say we do, that's a 14 grand off. That's leaving you with about what, 58, 60, yeah, 58K in your pocket, just by simply fixing this core problem. Now, we see this problem compounded even further when the business goes to that next level. Because you'll see the businesses out there who are clearing 10K per month. Maybe they peak at a low 20 or whatever, but they average out at around 12K per month. So they're hitting the number, they're definitely doing a good job. They're in that place where they are in a group of successful online business owners. But they're shooting for 25K per month because that's the next marker. Once you get north of 10K, most people set their sights on 25K a month. Well, that's a monthly gap now of 13K. Now, if you've not addressed these issues, and I see this a lot with people who are just those hardest workers in the room, they are those kind of beasts that will just keep on pushing until they essentially burn out. You will get to that 12K, but you won't get to that 25K consistently because you're not fixing the underlying problem that you should have fixed when your business was at 4K. But the difference now is the gap is 13,000 per month. You're leaving $156,000 on the table every year by not fixing this issue. And I think that this is one of those things that when you start to actually look at it to say, okay, like, is the business in a good spot? 12K a month, yeah. Like, can you live on 4K per month? Potentially, depending on your living situation, etc. But you're not achieving what you have set out to achieve. And that's not just a shrug of the shoulders situation. That's a big gap that needs to be closed and can be closed. So if we look at two possible versions of your business 12 months from now, if you do nothing, you're going to be in the same place. That's a pretty obvious one, isn't it? Like, you're going to have the same ceiling, you're going to have the same volatility in the month, in the business, good months, bad months, etc., etc. 3 calls one week, 0 the next, every single month. And I think that this is the bit where the emotion starts to come in. Like, after a while, it starts to feel tiring when every single month you go back to 0. And every single month you start that journey again of, what am I going to do for clients? Where's the new business coming from? And even the most positive person in the world gets ground down by that over time. You still have the issues with no-shows and those lost deals, the ones that you're like, I don't understand. They seem like a good fit. Why do they not close? They keep replaying in your mind. And the thing I refer to this as is revenue anxiety. That moment when you lay in bed and there's that noise in the back of your head of like, where's my next sale coming from? What am I going to do next month? What about the costs? What about my bills? Like this noise, it starts to get louder and louder the longer it goes. Essentially 12 months older, same conversation. Now, by the end of the session today, which is what I'm about to get into, is the other outcome. So 12 months from now, you could be running what I refer to as the daily 5, which generates calls every working day. You have a show rate above 80%. Now, that's just a pretty standard, good show rate for the industry. We're not looking to create something unrealistic. We're looking to get your close rate above 30%. Now, having a close rate above 30% is something that I'm going to talk more about in a bit, but this is something I hear all the time. Oh yeah, my close rate's really good. I close about 80%. But the reality is, and sorry to sound a little bit harsh, but the reality is if you're only having 2 or 3 calls a month and you're closing at 80%, that's not really an accurate close rate because it's a case of there's not enough data there to really generate something. And if by some miracle, when you increase that call volume, you hold an 80% close rate, fantastic. It means we have some raw sales skill here, but that means your product is at least a 50% price increase away from where it should be to be fairly priced in the market. So it comes back to that slide a minute ago where we look at what money are we leaving on the table and why. The next part here is making sure that we get our churn rate below 5%. Just to quickly touch on this, most businesses, some of the best businesses that I've done work with and I've stepped inside of, their churn rate sits at about 30%. But it's something that they've never really addressed because they have new customers constantly pouring in the front door, but they're also leaving straight out the back door. So we have this constant churn. So to put this into context, because a lot of people seem to get a little bit stuck around churn rate. If your churn rate is at 30%, that means you're 4 months away from going bankrupt if you don't continue to pick up new customers. So we need to make sure we get that churn rate below 5%. And there's a range of ways to do that, which we'll talk a little bit about as we move through the session. 12 months from now, with this system running, you're generating at least $10,000 per month, every month, with predictability, with certainty, getting to that number. So the business is working for you. So if we look then at the gap, Like, what is the issue here that is really causing these things? Inconsistent pipelines, random show rates, inconsistent closing, your clients are churning, and more than anything, you are approaching your business with anxiety and from a reactive stance. So you are in the place of the beginning of the month, I need new business. Let's go be reactive, get calls booked. And you create this feast and famine cycle just because of the nature of how it's being approached. If we get to where we want to be, which is one call a day being booked, 80% show rates. So if we do some actual numbers here rather than just talking in percentages, so if we book 30 calls a month, one call booked every single day, obviously you might book two calls one day and zero the next potentially, depending on how replies land, etc. But you're looking consistently at what's my call today? Where did I book my call? And you're looking for that consistency. From that, 24 calls show up. From that, 7 to 8 closes. I think it works out at like 7.6. So I just put the bracket there, 7 to 8. Churn rate below 5%. So that means you're losing 2 customers per month if you have 45 on your client roster. All of a sudden, you can now see pretty straightforward maths. This business is now substantially growing. If you're picking up 7 new customers a month and you're only losing 2, bearing in mind you've got 45 people on your roster, your business is growing at a great rate. So this is where we're looking to get to. Systematic, non-reactive, very proactive. And this is what we're going to start diving into. So for any of you that joined late, please feel free to share in the chat where you're from, any questions that you might have as we go through the session. I'll do my best to tackle all of them as we go, or at the very least at the end. But yeah, please feel free to put stuff in the chat, and I will be checking it periodically. But let's continue pushing forward. So look, by the end of this, you're going to have a couple of things. Now, I want to make sure you leave here with value regardless, but I do want to set the stall out up front. I think transparency is an important component here. You can either take what you learned today and do it on your own, and we all know what that means. I'm sure this is not the first webinar that we have all been on today. So that means you're going to have no accountability, there's no guarantee, there's no structure, but you absolutely can take the information and do with it what you will. And I really hope you implement it, because it's the system that's going to start to move your business forward. Alternatively, something that I will talk about as we go through today is the AMC mentorship. So for those of you that wonder, AMC, Alamos Consultancy, nothing particularly revolutionary, and it's our mentorship program. And this is your path to 10K per month. It's a mixture of one-to-one directly with me. It's built specifically around your business, and we put a money-back guarantee in place. So by the end of that program, your business is generating a minimum of 10K per month guaranteed, or you get a full refund. And it is the fastest path with a guarantee. I've done everything I can to create certainty for people who are in a place of uncertainty, because I genuinely know what that feels like at points. And I do this because I love what I do. I love building businesses, and I want people to have freedom. So let's dive in properly now. So the gap has 4 causes. So your appointment booking problem, we fix this using what we refer to as the daily 5 system. Outcome of that is 1 call a day. The show rate, we refer to this as the pre-frame 3. This is going to give you your 80% show rate. Your close rate, we improve using something called the gap close. This is to get you to 30% or above close rate. And your client retention, we use the retention multiplier to get your churn below 5%. So if we look first of all at the daily 5 system, and we have a few different approaches here to get there. And I want to explain each one in a bit of depth. So the goal here is simply to generate 5 conversations a day, like with qualified people. If we can generate 5 conversations per day, well, odds will show us that even a suboptimal system will consistently book 1 call per day, every working day. So how do we get there? Because we've got a few different options. We've got outreach, we've got content, and we've got paid media. And I think one of the first mistakes I see a lot of people make is they say, I don't like cold outreach, so I'm going to make content because I don't want to do the other thing. The problem is you start making content and you end up in a situation where you make a piece of content and you get little engagement. Maybe you get a few views, but you're not getting enough comments here to generate 5 conversations. So you get to a place where you start to feel a little bit disillusioned with content because you're like, well, I'm making reels and I'm making carousels and I've learned how to edit in Canva, and I could probably go get a job as a freelance content creator at this point because I've made so much content, but I'm still not getting sales. Content is I hear this a lot, the slow game. The problem is content is not the slow game if you're good at content. Now, I always put my hands up. Content is not my personal favorite approach for me personally, because I'm not great at content. Like, I'm a salesperson. I've worked in cold sales for 20 years. So for me, outreach fits very naturally. So I've learned content. We've built a decent following on TikTok. We have around 30,000 followers there. We've built a couple of Instagram accounts. Like, we can generate followers and we consistently bring in new followers through content. However, for me, I have identified that it's not the fastest approach. So I think we have to look at this and say, okay, well, let's start first of all with outreach. If we're looking to create 100 touches per day, so this means we're looking to connect with 100 people. Now that feels like a lot of people, which is why we need to work through a system quite quickly and go from manual action to time buyback. Time buyback is where we start to look at automation, AI, and human beings. But there's no point using those components if we don't even know what works. So we have to understand, how do we get to 100 touch points? And then from those 100, we're looking for 30 responses per day. So we're looking at, across a week, 500 touches, 30 responses. So that's 150 responses. From those responses, we're looking to start 9 conversations. Now, my definition of a conversation started is you get 2 replies. So that could just be that they reply with 1 word both times, because from those 9 conversations that get started, you're looking for 5 of them to progress. So that's just over 50% of them to actually turn into a conversation where you can book a call. So for those of you that purchase DM to deals, you've heard these types of numbers before, and you understand that from the perspective of doing outreach on LinkedIn, there's ways and means to do it. You obviously can do outreach through cold DMs, you can do warm DMs, you can do emails. When we're looking at it from an email perspective, these 100 touches don't come from your daily or weekly automated email that goes out. So I understand I email quite a lot as a company because we see good results from it. Those aren't included in my 100 touches. So we're looking at one-to-one emails in those situations, highly targeted emails to one specific type of person trying to start a very specific conversation. And that then drives these metrics. Now, these numbers are mapped out using cold DMs, cold strangers who don't know you. So there's a way and a means to get that conversation going. I don't have obviously the time today to go into the depths of the messaging to send, how to work that out. DM to deals obviously covers that. And I think a lot of you have got some understanding of that component. If we're doing warm DMs, well, you should see a much higher response rate here. My advice would not be to do less touches. It would be to do the same number of touches, because it then gives you a bigger margin for error, because you're learning to implement a new system. So this is less about doing as little as possible. It's more about hitting these numbers consistently to make sure that without doubt, you are getting this number in. This is a non-negotiable. If you're doing content, like I say, we're looking for 30 to 50 comments per day, which leads to 5 conversations on average, which again will give you your 1 call booked. So you may be some and some. And what we get to is typically paid media. So this is going to be Meta ads, LinkedIn ads, those types of things. I believe most people should start with Meta ads. We've had great success ourselves with Meta ad, despite the fact LinkedIn is one of our main platforms that we help people with. Budget wise, you're looking at $20 to $50 a day. You can start a little bit lower sometimes. The key thing here is we need consistency with the ad spend. And typically it's a mixture of outreach and content. So my recommendation would be to start with a follower ad with a very small group of people. So we're looking for an audience who is your ideal customer, typically under a couple of million in that audience, in very specific locations. We are using, hopefully, some of the content that we've created and tested that we see is our best performing. We're driving the ad so that they follow us, and we're then starting our conversation in the DMs so that we can get our call booked. So it's essentially content blended with outreach, and we're giving Meta $5, $10, $20 a day to help us get a handful of people. Now, to give you an understanding of how many people you should be getting, cost per lead, so cost per new follower, can vary from, I've seen it as low as 20 cents all the way up to $3, $4, depending on the niche. You're typically looking to get an average cost of between $1 and $1.50 per follower. So that gives you an understanding of what to expect when you go through that. But this is the core framework that will get you to 1 call per day booked. If it's followed religiously and it's followed diligently, this is what will start to move you forward. So next, the pre-frame 3. So before I move into this, if you have any questions about this daily 5 system, please drop them in the chat and I'll circle back to it at the end. But whilst they're fresh in your mind, pop them in there and then I can take a look afterwards. So the pre-frame 3, this is a path of how we get that show rate higher. So typically speaking, and this is an important component, I believe in approaching everything one bottleneck at a time. You absolutely could try and implement all of these things in one go, and you're going to spread yourself quite thin, and you may or may not pull it off. I see as a more predictable way of doing it and a more successful way is imagining that we're laying pipe work one at a time. We've got the tap. The tap is the daily 5 system. Let's turn our tap on and the water should start to pour out. So now we're like, okay, well, I'm trying to get my water from here to here. What pipe work do I need to lay to make that happen? And we will lay as much or as little pipe work as we need to make it happen. But we're going to do this one bottleneck at a time. So until we have water, so leads and calls being booked, we don't need to worry about pipe work. Okay, nothing's getting damaged if the water hits the floor because it's metaphorical water. So we have to get the water turned on first before we worry about anything else in the process. This is the path I have seen that works the most successfully every single time. So the pre-frame 3 is then us looking at, okay, well, when somebody books a call, what do they need to see in what sequence to show up to the call? And we want to do just enough to hit our 80% show rate. So for those of you who have booked a call with me in the past before, you're going to see that I have this email. So this is excluding the emails that you absolutely have as a mandatory thing. Confirmation email, reminder email, those things have to go out regardless. I'm not talking about that. So if you've booked a call with me before, you'll have seen a social proof email. It will reconfirm your appointment. It will tell you a little bit about what to expect, what environment to be in, and then it will put several social proof below of clients that I'll talk a little bit about as we go through here today. And this allows people to start to see a bit of credibility. It allows people to also start to see specific transformations. And something that I definitely see inside of my own social proof is a pattern of behavior. People saying, Alan really cares, Alan will go above and beyond, and person after person after person said it. And for me, I think it's not, I'm just me. I just show up and do the work that I do. And just like you show up to do the work that you do. But that pattern is nice to see because it means that the work you're doing is good, but it also shows those prospects coming through. If they're looking for somebody who's thoughtful and caring, well, that's what my clients are saying. That's who I am. That's what I do. And that's that first bit. The next bit, so if your show rate is now still below 80% after you've added the social proof, we now want to start to do a little bit of objection education. So this is quite common in a lot of like sequences pre-call, but we're going to start to look at what are the most common objections you're getting towards the end of the call, or what are the most common objections that come up as to why people cancel calls. One or both, depends on where the issues really lay. So this could be things like, I don't have the time, I've been burnt before getting on a sales call, money objections, spouse objections, whatever it might be. We want to start to now educate and remove some of that resistance so that we can, what I always call, address the elephant in the room. Like, what is that prospect thinking? If you've spoken to your ideal prospect, you already know what they're thinking. So let's start to talk to them and help them to unpack that, because that's going to show and separate you from a lot of the competition. And then if your if your show rate is still below 80%, now we need to bring in the third email. which is the roadmap. And this could be something as simple as taking one of your social proof and now really expanding it out into a case study to help that prospect understand, what does the journey look like? Where was this person before they started, and where are they now, and what did they have to overcome? What was that hero's journey? And if you don't have case studies that you can use, you can just map out what that roadmap starts to look like of a typical client, like how you help people, what barriers they tend to overcome. Like, we're looking to demonstrate here that you have a proven path, and we're looking to demonstrate that you know how to navigate the challenges that come up. Once we've got these 3 emails in place, you will have a close rate at around 80% or above, like maybe 79%, maybe 82%. It's going to be in that region of 80% when you zoom out, and we don't just look at a cherry-picked couple of days, but we look at a month or a quarter or biannually. We should be seeing that 80% rate holding very strong. So now we move into the gap close. So this is something that is quite straightforward, but sales is something that I think a lot of people overlook, because they go, well, I worked with a coach once and they gave me a script and I just used the script. The problem I see with that is twofold. Number one, it's their script, not yours. So unless you are from the same place with a similar tone and the same types of beliefs, the script doesn't feel 100% authentic. The second part is that unless you practice that script a lot, and you can practice on live calls if you want, it's quite an expensive way of practicing, but you should be practicing just like you've practiced coaching, just like you practice sport, just like you practice anything else that's important. I don't know why, but sales is so often overlooked. I think it comes down to a place of coaches generally are not sales centric. It's a very opposite energy. So it's like, well, I don't like sales, so I don't want to do it unless I have to. So you'll show up to the call and, like, sorry to generalize, but that's typically one of the things that I see a lot. So we need to definitely practice whatever we're doing from a sales perspective. For me, this should just be a conversation. We need to collect things as we go. So it's a bit like a quest. We're going through and we're going to diagnose the person. We need to bring that real pain to the surface. And that can be as simple as starting with some numbers. Numbers are surface level questions. How long have you been stuck? How many programs have you tried? How much weight you're looking to lose? How many people do you employ? Anything number based. And what that does is it creates, I always think quite visually. So it creates this place where you're in this corridor. You've got this horseshoe of doors in front of you. Each one of those numbers represents a door. What number is the most important for you to now start to question further? Because we want to start to question the gap. We need to go deeper, and we need to start to bring some emotion into this component. We need to understand, like, what is not only the ideal outcome, but what is the worst case scenario here if nothing changes? And we start to create this gap. So we've got the pillar here, and we've got where they're trying to get to, and we've got this big gap in the middle. And one of the biggest things that I see people make the mistake around, and one of the easiest things to fix, is they prescribe their program. They say, my program is this and it does X, Y, and Z, like they're talking to a whole room. Well, we're not. We're talking one-to-one with a person. We now have specific pain points that we can now weave in. Like, we need to start to sell the solution as to why it's important for this one person that we're speaking to today to join your program. We need to show them how, if it's a high-ticket program, it needs to deliver a high level of value. Like, we can't just go selling a PDF at a high ticket price point and a generic program. That's a low ticket or possibly mid ticket. If we have a high ticket program, how can I see that this program will work for me specifically? Not men over 40, but Alan Miles. And that's where you pitch the gap. And you basically build the bridge between these two situations. And then you need to handle the objection. Now, the gap close in itself and just sales in general is a massive topic inside of the curriculum and the areas we work on and the role plays that we do together on our one-to-one calls, those kind of things. But if nothing else, a great simple way of practicing your sales, open up ChatGPT, turn on the voice mode on your mobile, and the little blue orb will come up on the screen. You can give it a profile that you want it to play, and you can give it some objections you want it to give you, and then you can ask it to role play with you. And it will have a proper conversation with you, so you can avoid the embarrassment of having to role play with another person if you don't want to do that. But you diligently do that every day, 5 to 10 minutes a day, just working on one small thing, just like you're doing Duolingo, trying to learn a language. Like it's the same thing, and then you can start to improve that sales ability, because sales is the key. Like getting sales in your business, it's the lifeblood of your business. It's one of, if not the most important thing besides your offer. So when we're looking at the objection, we do something very simple. First of all, we need to acknowledge them, completely understand. Then we need to isolate. So we need to understand, is this a complaint first of all, or is it actually an objection? So somebody could say, oh, that's a lot of money. Well, that's not an objection yet. That's just a complaint. Like a Rolls Royce is a lot of money. You don't walk into a Rolls Royce dealership and go, oh, that's cheap, a couple of $100,000. It's expensive. Like you're stating the obvious. So we want to be sure that we are identifying, is this a complaint? Yep, completely understand. It is a solid investment. Are you ready to move forward? No, I don't have that money. Okay, no worries. Now we have an objection. So we need to dissolve that objection. So we've identified it's an objection, we need to dissolve it, and we need to start to get some tie downs. We need to understand, if they've said it's expensive, is it because they don't see the value, or is there something else? If they say that they need to speak to their spouse, is that an objection that they're just trying to sidestep the actual truth of the situation, or is that the reality? Is their spouse actually the decision maker? We probably should have already known that at the beginning of the call, but we didn't, and we're here. So we need to then dissolve that situation. So we put the money to one side. We start to now create logical tie downs. If we've done this process correctly, when we pitch the gap, if you imagine your prospect to now be a hot air balloon filled with flames and they are excited, they should be like starting to float up, super excited that they're going to like get this transformation that they want. They are emotionally sold. Now we need to logically close. So as we go through into objection handling, etc., we need to start tying this hot air balloon back down with logic, making sure that the program is right, they feel they can do the work, that you're the right person to help them, that all these other areas, it's going to be slightly different for each niche, so I don't get too deep into this, but we need to tie it down. Again, it's that visual idea of, we don't want the hot air balloon to float off, because if that hot air balloon floats off, what happens is they make the purchase, they then have buyer's remorse. And that's when you start to see people turn around a couple of hours later and they're like, do you know what? I think I made a mistake. I was super excited and I shouldn't have done that. I spoke to my husband and he said I have to request a refund, or I spoke to my wife and they said this, or I did this, or whatever. If we have logically closed them, not only have we done everything we can do from an ethical standpoint to make sure this is the right fit for them and that they're ready to get started, but we can also relay back to them. If they do start to get some fear or they're a bit nervous, which we would expect from somebody who is really wanting and cares about the result, we can relay to them. But when we spoke an hour ago, you said that you could do the work. You said X, Y, and Z. What has changed? And we coach them through the sale. So all of a sudden, sales goes from being this not very natural thing to actually sitting right inside of a coach's wheelhouse by just using a couple of key mechanisms. And this is how we would approach the gap close. And then we get to the retention multiplier. So I think we're doing okay for time. So the retention multiplier, this is something that for me, I was quite shocked when I started talking about this and coaching one-to-one on this topic, that a lot of people don't track. And beyond that, they don't understand actually what it is. So I've spoken to many businesses who are like, no, I don't have a problem with churn. We have 10 new customers a month coming in or 20 new customers a month coming in. So like the 10 that we're losing doesn't matter. Well, just because you've got 10 coming in and 10 going out, that doesn't mean you have a 0% churn. Like depending on how many clients you've got would depend on what that churn rate is. You exclude your new customers from your churn number. To calculate your churn, you take how many customers you have at the start of a month and you divide that by the how many people have left. So if you have a roster of 100 people and 10 customers leave, it doesn't matter how many new ones have started because that number's irrelevant at this point. Like you have a 10% churn. So we have to understand. And then those new customers that come in, they get added to your client roster. So the beginning of that next month, they're included in that number. So if we take a look at this, if you have 20 customers right now and you are losing six on a monthly basis and you are pedaling as hard as you can to replace them every month, and some months you get seven new customers, some months you get four, you're probably just about staying still, but you are in a constant state of anxiety and reactiveness because you have around a 30% churn, which means if you try to take a holiday and you lose half the month because you take 2 weeks off and now you only take on two new customers, well, you feel that pressure in real life because you're just over 3 months away from going bankrupt if you don't keep bringing in these new customers. So reducing this churn rate not only is critical for compounded business growth, but it's also critical to get yourself into the right mindset to actually systematically grow the business instead of reactively growing the business. Because if we bring this down to 5%, like that's one customer. You can now go the best part of 6 months, even if you only have 20 customers, before you're in grave danger of the business going under. And it also, not only that, but let's say you took 3 months off. You've now lost half of your client roster. You've got 10 clients left. You've had a 3-month holiday. You should be ready to go at that point and rebuild your business. And you know you're only going to continue to lose one customer. So if you come in now and pick up 7 or 8 customers in that next month, well, your business is already growing again. Like it changes everything when we start to get clear on this. And it blows my mind that a lot of people really don't look at this side of things. So churn is something that when we look at, I think there's a few reasons that a high churn happens. So sometimes it's very genuine. You have let's say a 3-month program, you have nothing beyond that. So people go through your 3-month program and then they leave. What's a natural churn? Like is natural churn. So the question then becomes, what is that next logical step for the person? Because once we have addressed the water issue, which is booking appointments, and we've now started to lay that pipe work of getting customers to the call, closing the customers, now we need to make sure that this water is coming out of what I would refer to in England as the tap. I presume a lot of people on the call would refer to it as a faucet. So how do we get the water coming out into our glass? And that's where this kicks in. So if we understand currently we have a 3-month client lifespan, how do we make that 6, 9, 12, 18, 24? For reference, my client lifespan is approximately 3 years at this point. So I don't start with a 3-year program. People have a journey to go through, a logical journey in what I would refer to as a sticky offer environment. And sticky offers are some of the best offers because they create logical extensions and ascensions for your customers. So if you were to look at your ideal customer, what is that journey that they go on to get from where they are to where they're trying to get to? I highly doubt that is a 3-month journey or a 60-day journey. So the question then becomes, what does your program currently address? And then what are the next gaps? And then what are the added components that you can bring in to make the journey easier for your customer? So for us, as an example, we use Go High Level. It's white labeled as Sales Ultra. That makes not only our life easier, but it makes our customers' lives easier. Because if we're working one-on-one with a customer, we can now drop things into their account. We can build things much quicker. We don't have to learn a wide range of softwares. We know what software we recommend and we know how to use it, and we can help clients get traction quicker. Do customers have to use it? No. Does it make logical sense if they don't have landing page software, automation software, a CRM? Does it make logical sense for them to use it? Absolutely. Because it takes care of that component for them in their business, and it creates for us a sticky offer environment. It now gives us a reason to keep customers for a longer period of time. So by doing these types of things, we're able to start to lower our churn rate. There's a few other things that go into it, especially if we look at it like, obviously, if customers just fall off after 3 months, we build out a longer journey. If we are, for example, hemorrhaging customers because people aren't getting an outcome, or something isn't working, this is when we do need to look at the delivery side of things. What's happening? Is there a problem in the sales process? Are we overselling and then under delivering? Is there something not quite right with the program? Like what, that's when we have to dive a bit deeper. But the key here is we need to systematically check every single month, like what's that churn rate? What are we doing to bring it down? And then we start to test and we bring those things through. So couple of examples just to run through. And if you've had a call with me before, you'll have seen some of these on the confirmation email. Dina, I think, is a great example. She's a business owner. She's obviously a lady based in the US in her, I'll say 50s. And she came to me. So she was running Facebook ads. She was making about $900 a month, and she was spending a lot more than that. And it was just flowing out of the business. Like calls weren't being booked, people weren't buying. She was right at stage one. She had turned the water on though, which was great. So we had to lay that pipe work and walk it through. Within 4 months, she went from $900 a month in revenue to 40K per month cash collected revenue. She pulled the business back a little bit after that, and she settled at around that 25 to 30K per month mark consistently, month after month, because that's the business that she wanted. And I think that this is something that's a really important decision. When we start working with people, we audit what they're looking to achieve, because I think we're so programmed to say, yeah, I want my business to be as big as possible. But most of us don't. Like, we actually are looking for a specific number. And most of us, myself included, which is the reason I sold my previous company, my recruitment business, we were doing north of £1 million per year in that business. And I sold that business because I wanted to spend more time with my kids. It wasn't just about money, it was about life. So, yes, you can scale to the moon. That is a completely different path to somebody who is wanting a great lifestyle business that makes them that 10K, 20K, 30K, 40K per month. It comes with different challenges. So Dina, she was doing 24 calls per month and continues in that way. Michelle, her show rate was not great. She had relied a lot on referrals. That show rate was fantastic because people were coming in, and once they got in front of her, they wanted to buy. But referrals are very volatile. It depends on lots of things as to why referrals come in or if they don't come in. So for us, this was pretty simple. We know the product's good. We know people love it. How do we get people who don't know her to show up consistently? We'll put that social proof in front of them. And within a few short weeks, the show rate jumps up to the 80%. Matt is another good example. Matt is in the at the VA space. So he has like an agency, it helps people. His business was doing around 10K per month, give or take, when we started working together. Within the first call of looking at what are you doing and what's working, what's not, Matt was one of those people who I would refer to as a beast. He was doing everything at 100%. And I was like, okay, well, that's great. It's very admirable. But 80% of your results are coming from 20% of what you're doing. Imagine if you put 100% of your effort into that 20%. Within the first 30 days, he had double the amount of calls coming through on his calendar. We already had proof of concept. The business was then able to just exponentially grow by just understanding and having somebody look at the business and say, okay, what's working, what's not working, where should we put our time, and how do we move these things forward? And then finally, just another quick example would be Lucy. Lucy had the issue that I spoke about a second ago of she had a 3-month program and nothing for people to do afterwards. But she had a wealth of experience of helping people, or in her own business, taking it far beyond the point that she was currently just helping people with. So again, we sat there, we audited, we looked at that offer, and we were like, well, there's a gap right here. You already have people coming through a program. Let's go and see, does it make sense? Can we create that ascension? Can we create that sticky offer environment? Within the first 30 days of us starting to work together, she had closed with our brand new offer, a £15,000 deal. So am I sat here saying that everyone will get all of these results all of the time? Obviously not. Like, you have to do the work, which is why we make our guarantee of 10K per month. Like, guaranteed. Like, I am confident in the work that we do, that we can get people to a set level, no questions asked, as long as you do the work. So from here, like, what's the roadmap? What does it look like for you? So you have an understanding of the daily five. You need to go get 5 conversations today, and that will lead you to one call. And if it doesn't, we need to start to then understand, what are you saying in the conversation? What can you try that's different to get, and you keep making these adjustments until you get your one call a day. Then once we've got that in place, and only once we've got that in place, we then look at the pre-frame 3. Then once that's working and your show rate's at 80%, you need to do the gap close. And then once that's in place, you've now got leads, show rate, and sales happening. Now we look at the retention. What's happening with your retention, and how do we get that down to 5%? And I think that one of the things that stops people a lot of the time is, and feel free, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've been in this situation before. I've learned something new, or I've got pumped up by somebody telling me some great information, and like I start off motivated. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go do this stuff. But then you hit a roadblock and something doesn't work like you thought it might work. So you have your first 5, 10, 15, 20 conversations, but you didn't book a call. Well, why? Maybe Alan's wrong. Maybe it doesn't work. But you start to overthink it. What do I say in that first DM? Then you go speak to Claude, and you speak to ChatGPT, and maybe even Manus, and you get 3 different starting messages, and none of them sound like you, but you test all of them and none of them work. And then you're right back at that beginning again, being like, I don't know what to say. I hate messaging. I don't like that. I'm going to go try some content instead. And you go straight back to that reactive action that you've been doing that has got you into a place where you're trapped. Like, you've got nobody to hold you accountable. So those actions, they start to slip. Like, maybe you close a call, you lose the next one, and you've got nobody to review your call. You've got nobody to tell you, okay, well, we need to work on this bit in the call. Let's go practice this bit for a week. I want to do a role play with you. Let's work on these components. And ultimately, what happens is we go back to where we were before. That doubt loop, it kicks back in, reactive mode creeps back in, and we start going back through those peaks and troughs again, because we're chasing our tail constantly instead of seeing through what needs to happen. So I've always been a very open book to anyone who talks to me. I have spent years figuring this out. I've spent over 20 years in sales, and I've spent 7 or 8 years in the online space building these businesses. Like, I have made a lot of mistakes along the way. I have spent a lot more money than I care to admit, learning different skills, seeing what other people are doing, trying to understand what works and what doesn't work. Like, I don't want you to have to do that unless you want to do that. If you want to spend years figuring it out alone, then all the more power to you. I'm sure eventually you will get there. Like, that's just me being honest. Like, if you stay consistent, if you keep pushing forward, you've got a chance to get there. But the if is the thing. So I created the AMC mentorship program because I want to give people the system with confidence that gets you to where you need to get to. So for those of you that are interested, this is what it looks like. So it's a 12-month journey. This is your personal path to 10K per month. Whoops. So those first 3 months, for the sake of this example, we're going to presume you're at ground zero. You're literally at zero. So those first few months, we need to build the foundation. We need to audit the business, first of all. What do we have? What do we not have? Is there any low-hanging fruit here? Can we pump some life into this quickly? Or are we really just wiping the decks clean and starting from fresh? We need to clarify your offer. And we need to understand, what does that longer journey look like for a customer? We need to understand your positioning, your audience. We need to understand, what is your content strategy? Are you just making content to dress the shop window, so to speak? Or is your conversational strategy going to be content? Like, we need to understand your baseline data, take a pulse, take some blood pressure of your business to understand, as we make adjustments, what happens? Does the business get healthier or does it get unhealthier? And from there, we're able to build a simple growth plan with personal actions that you need to follow each and every day in your business. By the time we get to month 3, so in this month 3 to 6, we're obviously implementing, and we're now starting to go from manual action into time buyback. So we've been executing the plan for the last couple of months, and we now understand to some degree what works, at least at the beginning part of this process. Like, what works? Now we can create a temporary SOP. That's a standard operating procedure So a step by step of how the process is done. And we can start to fragment off certain parts of that process to start to create some time freedom for you by going through time buyback. So we look at automation, AI, then humans in that order because that's cheapest and most expensive because we're prioritizing profits in the business. This should be a lean lifestyle business, which means you should be north of 80% profit in the business before taxes, et cetera, but operating costs. So as we go through those next 3 months, like we remove that low value work from you, as much of it as we can, and we get those bits automated so that you can spend time on new processes. You're the one digging those trenches, going through that manual action, getting things working how you want them to work. We create the SOP, then we get the time buyback. And by the time we get to the end of month 9, so in that 6 to 9 block, we're now starting to look at other models. So if you've got the idea of some kind of scale, this is where we start to look at follower ads or self-liquidating offers, like low ticket products, etc., to start to create these components that allow for expanded growth if you're really looking for scale. Now we're at month 9. We're heading towards that final quarter of the year. This is where we have a level of certainty because we now have enough data to be able to create your personal playbook, your SOPs that are set in stone. Like they're not temporary, they're not, things might change, we're still collecting data and refining. I have had enough people go through this now. I've had 300 booked calls. This is the process of how we book a call. This is what we need to say. This is how we get people to show up. This is how we get people to close. This is how we deliver a fantastic product. This is when we collect testimonials. This is how we take the customer into the next part of the journey, and so on and so forth. We build that playbook so that you have everything then that you need. Operationally, that allows you to improve, and we're now just looking for small micro adjustments moving forward. And that's when we then start to look at what comes after the 12th month. Like, what are you looking to achieve? For some businesses who are going to go through this program, you're done. Like, genuinely, your job is done. You've got a business that is netting 7 to 8K per month profit. You're happy. You've got the life that you want. You've done it. Like now you just need to maintain it. And sometimes people want a little bit of support and hand holding to make sure that they don't fall off the wagon. But the reality is, unless your goal is to scale far beyond that, it's mission accomplished. And we've got to where we want to within the 12 months. So like for me, the way in which we do this is a few different things. So we obviously, everything I've spoken about today, we go into in far more depth so that you have what you need to be able to implement these things in your first couple of months. Like this, what I've covered today really focuses in on that first 30 to 90 days. We obviously include one-to-one calls with me, I'm Alan, every 2 weeks. So that's for us to go through things like your numbers, really identify your gaps. I don't have other coaches in my business. If somebody is coming into one of my programs, if there is any one-to-one, it is delivered by me. I am obviously one human being. I can only take so many people at any one time, but I've done that by design because that's the type of business I want to build. It's called Alan Miles Consultancy. It's not called Alan Miles and Partners. So this is about working with me and having me in your business. Alongside these one-to-one calls, we have live weekly group calls, and those will include monthly hot seats for people who want to take part. So I'm trying to find as many ways as possible to get you not only to learn in your environment, but to also learn by osmosis from other people going through the journey, because I think it can be a lonely journey sometimes. There's a curriculum which is based around video content. We will walk through specifically what content you need to watch specifically for you. We bundle in Sales Ultra for a full 12 months. So that in itself is over £1,000 worth of software. If you go look on Go High Level's website, it starts at $97 a month. We include that completely at no extra cost for the first year. And anything that you need from a template perspective that we talk about on our calls or in our curriculum, we give you. You don't need to make it. You don't need to start from scratch. Obviously, you need to rewrite an email or whatever, change a couple of bits, but you're walked through how to do those things. But the architecture is there. The amount of hours I spent sat on Zapier trying to learn how to connect different softwares together, spending hours trying to get automations to work. I would lose days over it. So for me, this in itself is a real quick jump forward for a lot of people. And you have that clear path to 10K per month. So 10K per month as an absolute minimum, guaranteed, or a full refund at the end of the program. It is literally that straightforward. So just to finally finish off, a couple of key things. And I think that what does $10,000 a month actually mean? And that means different things to different people. But I think most importantly, it means some level of certainty. So it means that you are not worrying about your pipeline. You don't have that revenue anxiety. You can go back to having your weekends back, having a holiday, spending time with friends, like enjoying life instead of constantly being worried about your business and is it going to survive like an elderly relative on life support. Like it gives you freedom and it gives you certainty. But when you have that certainty, it allows you to approach the business in a completely different way. You're no longer making those decisions out of fear and out of necessity. You're able to sit there and you're able to make decisions based on what is best for the business at this point in time, not what is my only option. Like what's going to help today. Like we can look at that bigger picture. And I think that for me, I mean, you can obviously read the slide yourself. Like, those are the things that really sit with me in that helping people to get that peace of mind and helping people to build a business that they dreamt of when they first started. And then that dream slowly turned into a bit of a nightmare. And I think we can all relate to that part of the journey to some degree. Like it's hard building a business. And it's not just as simple as showing up and coaching clients, which is what you love to do. You have to do the other stuff. And that's what this program is really all about, helping you get to that place. So, a couple of objections that come up quite often. Well, why don't I just take what you've learned today? You've shared loads of stuff. I figure out, I think I know what you're talking about, and there's enough here for me to go do a bit. And if it doesn't work, I'll come back to you. So, yeah, you could do that if you wanted. The biggest issue with that is that if 3 to 6 months from now it's not working for you, you haven't just lost a couple of months. If we go all the way back to this, well, depending on how many months you've been sat at your 4K, or maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, like let's just call it 5K. Like if you've sat there for 6 months, it's like 30 grand that you've lost. You could have just fixed it. If you're on more revenue, it's even more money. It's like 60 grand, 70 grand, whatever it might be. There's a lot of money sitting here, all because you wanted to just try and figure it out yourself, which is more often than not an ego thing, or you've been burnt in the past and you're worried and you're like, well, will this actually work for me? Because I've tried these things before and they don't work. Well, they do work because otherwise I wouldn't have much of a business giving people money back guarantees. So the key thing here is understanding, like going off and trying this on your own, unless you are certain you're going to make this work, that is a big risk. That's an expensive buying decision that's going to cost you more money than the price of the program. So that's something to really take into consideration and think on. The next objection I get a lot is, well, why don't I just hire an agency? And I've had a lot of people over the years ask me to step in and do their lead generation. And it's something that we have done periodically. And I always put it in exactly the same way. An agency is an expensive luxury. Even if you know what your process is, it's an expensive luxury. In a few situations, it does make sense. But for a lot of people, it's an expensive luxury that erodes your profit margin. So you're buying time now, but you're massively eroding your profit margin. If you're in a situation where you don't actually know what creates results, then it becomes a risk, a really big, expensive risk, because you have to have an agency in your business for multiple months for them to have any kind of fair shot of getting things working, versus you just rolling up your sleeves with a clear blueprint and actually saying, okay, well, in 30 days, I can get far clearer than if I gave an agency 90 days. The agency might understand sales better, but they're only going to be in your account a few hours a day. Like that's what you've paid for. So it's then a case of saying, okay, well, what gets me to where I'm trying to get to quicker, even if I have to do some of this myself? And for me, I think that an agency sounds like a great idea, but very rarely does it pan out how you would like it to until you know for certain what works. When we get to time buyback, once you know what works, if it makes sense for you to use an agency because you don't want a business where you're managing team members, you just want to use external services, well, bingo, that's the moment. But that's the trade-off. You're then going to be trading off a large chunk of your profit margin to bring those people in if you are using a proper agency, not just some VAs. So that brings us to the guarantee. A business generating $10,000 per month, like working together, us implementing the system. If you don't hit $10,000 a month, by the end of the program, you get every penny back. No questions asked. No risk, all upside. As long as you do the work, there's no risk. It is all upside. So we've got a clear next step. If this is something that is of interest and you're maybe sat on the fence a little bit right now and you're like, do you know what? I just want to make absolutely sure that this is a good fit for me. Book a call. I'm going to put the link to book a call in the chat now. And it's a 15-minute call. It might go a little bit longer, but 15, 20 minutes. And we'll talk a bit about your business. I'll make sure that this is a good fit for you. There's zero pressure. Like, there's no hard close on this call at all. Like, we're going to talk about your business, understand where are you at, can this help you? And if so, this is how we get started. If, however, I've gone through today and you're like, do you know what? I just want to get started. I do have, obviously, a limited number of spaces. So I've put a link in the chat now. We've got two options. We've got a paid in full option and we've got a monthly pay option. Now, the obvious question is how much is the program? Because you've not told us, Alan. So bearing in mind, we're building a business here with you that's generating at least $120,000 per year. So for the entire 12 months, if you pay in full, it's $10,000. We're incentivizing the paid in full because then I know you're fully committed. I know that you're all in, because the monthly, for some people, that is the best option. But the monthly, if your business is consistently already on the path to 10K, but you're not quite there and you're definitely not there consistently, paying $1,000 a month, well, you don't feel that quite so much as if you were at 2 or 3K per month. So you've got two options. It's $10,000 per month or $10,000 for the year or $1,000 per month. For everyone who was registered for this, you will have received a $500 discount. So you can use that code. Have to check back on your emails. I believe the code is AMC20E6 at checkout. That will take your first month down to $500 or your overall total to $9,500. So both groups can benefit from it. I think it is a fair number to say if we were building a business of 120,000, I've seen people charge 30K for these types of programs. We're not doing that. I want people to walk away from here with a 10x return on their investment. Like, that feels like a good deal. That feels like you've genuinely built something. $10,000 is a solid investment. That's you making a big commitment to your future. So you have those two options, $10,000 paid in full or $1,000 per month. You can cancel at any time if you don't want to continue. The guarantee does require you to complete the year. So you could start month one, you could use your $500 discount, month one for $500. Let me see if it's as good as he says. If it is, great, you stay and you roll forward. If you don't like it or it isn't any good, you leave after that first month and there's nothing more that's been risked. Like, from my perspective, I don't think I can create a fairer deal than that. So we've got a couple of minutes. I just want to open the floor to any questions. I'll quickly check through the chat. You can either unmute yourself or drop something in the chat if you do have any questions. I don't think there's any questions in the chat. Good to see people from around the world. Mohammed, like, good to see that you're doing some bits on Upwork. Yeah, I can't see any questions. If there are any questions, put them in the chat, or we'll bring it to a close. The replay will be sent out shortly after the call, and there'll be a link in the email replay to book a call or join the program. So let me know. I can't see any questions, so we've got a quiet group today. I appreciate all of you spending the time with me today. It's been great seeing you all. If you do have any questions, feel free to message me, and I will see you all soon.